evening and welcome to the Friday, September 30th, 2011 edition of InfoWars Nightly News. I'm Aaron Dykes sitting in for Alex while he's out on assignment. Now, coming up in the show tonight, we have two in-studio guests from the Fluoride Action Network. That would be Dr. Griffin Cole and Laura Presley, Ph.D. We also have a two-part fluoride special report coming up. But first, the news. Two U.S.-born terrorists were killed in the CIA-led drone strike. That would be top al-Qaeda leader Anwar al-Awlaki, the double agent who dined at the Pentagon admittedly and was now assassinated, the first U.S. citizen to be targeted by predator drones killed in Yemen, according to official reports. However, he has been reported dead more than 5 times before. We have the report from Steve Watson, no more Pentagon dinners, al-Qaeda leader killed again, and it gets into how there were many untimely reports of his death. So with more on that, we take you now to a special report on the life and times of CIA Pentagon asset Anwar al-Awlaki.
A U.S. counterterrorism official says American forces targeted al-Qaeda cleric Anwar al-Awlaki's convoy in Yemen with a drone and jet attack and believe he's been killed. The Yemeni government says the airstrike happened near the eastern town of Kashef. Al-Awlaki is on a U.S. kill or capture list. The cleric, known for his fiery anti-American rhetoric, has been suspected of ties to the Fort Hood attack and the attempted Christmas Day airliner bombing in 2009. The Pakistani-American, who pleaded guilty to the May 2010 Times Square car bombing attempt, told interrogators he was inspired by al-Awlaki after making contact over the internet. In July, U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta said the Yemeni-American was a priority target.
The Yemen Defense Ministry, when they first came out with report, guys, about an hour and 10 minutes ago, said it was their doing, that they were involved, that they were the ones that got him. First of all, what is the hard, confirmed identification of it? Where is the body? And what are we doing with that body? And so far, it is Friday Prayers Day, so Yemeni government officials are kind of out of contact in this time period. But
FBI documents obtained as part of an ongoing Fox investigation state that Anwar al-Awlaki, now the first American on the CIA's killer capture list, was a lunch guest of the military. After being vetted by a Defense Department employee, quote, Awlaki was invited to and attended a luncheon at the Pentagon in the Secretary of the Army's Office of Government Counsel. Awlaki, who is the imam at this mosque in Falls Church, Virginia, was interviewed at least 4 times by the FBI in the first week after 9/11 because of his previous contact with 3 of the hijackers who struck the Pentagon. This information was apparently never reviewed by the Pentagon.
An Army spokesman insisted that the lunch was not an Army event, but rather it was sponsored by the Office of the Secretary of Defense.
He's a controlled asset, and of course it's not a matter of failure to connect the dots. We're hearing all about the unconnected dots. No, this is the desired outcome. Let me just point out a couple of other things here. We're told that this alleged bomber, right, Knicker bomber, whatever they call him, he was in contact with this character Awlaki in Yemen. And of course, this Awlaki, I call him Awlaki the CIA lackey. Awlaki the lackey, and remember, he's a CIA lackey. He's a double agent, a triple agent if you want. He is used as a kind of beacon to recruit patsies across the world, and they can always sheep dip somebody like Major Hassan. If they want to say, you're linked to Al-Qaeda, they just have you exchange a few emails with this Awlaki, and that's what he's good for, right? He goes back to 9/11 and Hani Hanjour. So this guy is he's a U.S. agent under whatever layers of garb that he's got. The other thing is, how was this young patsy Omar Farouk Mutalab, how is he radicalized? And I think we're getting some pretty good indications that it's this Brixton Mosque, Finsbury Mosque axis in London, the school for patsies, the British patsy.
Which, by the way, 6 months ago, I remember it, you predicted we'd see plane bombings out of that mosque.
This is not so hard to do. Remember Richard Reed, mentally retarded vagrant who was sleeping on the floor of Brixton Mosque, I think. He was given the same PETN explosive by somebody, so that's what this Omar Farouk was given then, allegedly, once again in in Yemen. So you can see it fits together, and it all comes from these same places.
There are reports today that the Christmas Day body bomber met with an American-born radical cleric, Anwar al-Awlaki. He's believed to be living in Yemen, al-Awlaki is. He's not only been linked to al-Qaeda in the past, but he reportedly exchanged emails with the suspected Fort Hood shooter Nidal Hassan before that shooting massacre in Texas.
Now again, Anwar al-Awlaki, the CIA lackey, as Webster Tarpley appropriately calls him, is connected to all these foiled terror plots. He was connected to, as the clip mentions, at least three of the 9/11 hijackers. He was interviewed by the FBI more than 4 times, and yet he was invited to the Pentagon only months after 9/11 to meet with top brass. That really should tell a huge story about what's going on in this phony war on terror. Now, on the other side of the same coin, you have today in the news, or this week in the news rather, Rezwan Firdaus, the man accused of trying to blow up the Capitol and Pentagon using a remote-controlled airplane, and he was once again admittedly set up by the FBI. They provocateured him, lured him into extremist action, gave him what appeared to be the bomb and the other weapons, including phony AK-47s and so forth. And this is the pattern we have seen repeatedly, especially since 9/11, but also long before it, where the FBI is directly behind setting up random patsies they find on the streets, these mentally low IQ'd people and so-called extremists, to use them to advance the public agenda. So the public believes these plots are always happening. Meanwhile, the FBI is admittedly behind them. Even Geraldo was on Fox News talking about how bogus this whole paradigm is. And remember, too, the FBI was admittedly behind the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, cooking the bomb, giving it to those people, and encouraging them to carry out their attempted act of terrorism, which killed 4 people. Let's go to this clip now.
They say that just today, the undercover operatives, gave Firdaus material that was supposed to be the explosive material C4. They say only a small amount of it was the real thing. A law enforcement official also tells us they gave him AK-47s and grenades, but those were not functional. We have to stress one very important point, Wolf. A U.S. law enforcement official CNN spoke with today said there was no danger to the public since undercover operatives were involved very early on.
There's at least 20 plots I've read about where the FBI admittedly used entrapment techniques. These people may have hated the country, they may have even been radical in their minds, but they had no means to carry out the things they were accused of. They only became dangerous once they were set up through these FBI systems. And it's all just a fraud meant to trick the public, and we've had enough of it. We need to learn what's going on and say no to this entire phony war on terrorism, because they are clamping down on our freedoms as ordinary Americans. Now, as we're talking about the police state domestic terrorism clampdown in this country, there's an entirely different kind of clampdown that continues to go on. You've heard about lemonade stands being shut down. You've heard about Gibson guitars not able to manufacture in the U.S. You've heard about lemon trees being seized and quarantined. Now in Wisconsin, a very controversial and important ruling where a judge has said you do not have a right to produce your own food or even eat the foods of your own choice. He specifically ruled that plaintiffs do not have a fundamental right to own and use a dairy cow. They do not have a fundamental right to consume the milk from their own cow, do not have a fundamental right to board their cow at a farm or with a certain farmer, and that private contracts don't fall outside the scope of the state's police power. And furthermore, that there's no fundamental right to even produce or consume foods of their own choice. That is absolutely radical, and they've used the FDA and the other arms of the federal government, just agencies with policies, to try to tell Americans that the government will tell them what to eat, when and where, but that making your own choices, using raw dairy, you've seen the raids on Rawson Foods and others. It's just incredible, but it continues to happen. The raids on the Amish dairy farmers and all the rest of it. Here's a video we put together highlighting some of the past clampdown on what should really be ordinary American behavior that even the Founding Fathers warned tyrannical government would control.
Remember Julie Bass? She's the Oak Park mom who's being prosecuted for putting a vegetable garden in her front yard. Why? Because the city's ordinance says a front yard has to have suitable live plant material.
Get off my property. I don't want you here. I'm shutting my garage. Get out of my garage.
Listen, so now we get the right to interrogate you, not interrogate you, but we get
I got the right to remain silent.
Okay, listen.
I invoke my right to remain silent, so.
I waved at you. Just, hey, how's it going? And you call me a Nazi?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you calling me a Nazi?
Because you're acting like one. You need to get off my property.
I need to see your ID.
I'm standing in my garage.
Yes, sir, you are.
You are violating my Fourth Amendment. Show me a search warrant. You're in my property.
No.
You're not welcome here. You're not welcome here.
So I need your driver's license. I need some form of ID.
I'm handing him my ID. This is not constitutionally allowed. This guy's violating my Fourth Amendment right. Both of y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. You're violating your oath to the Constitution right now. Okay. We are not slaves. You work for me, buddy.
Turn around for me, sir.
For what?
Turn around for me.
For what? Am I under arrest? I'm under arrest.
Turn around for me. I'm not gonna... Yes, don't be intimidated. Don't be intimidated. Don't be intimidated by them. Whoa! Hey! Leave these people alone. I'm sorry, you're under arrest. Leave these people alone. Leave them alone.
I am getting arrested for selling lemonade. Do you guys have surgery?
10 cents, guys. We've got a few cups.
That's not what happens when you sell lemonade.
Why are you kidnapping people?
Is there anything on you that can hurt me?
No. You people should be ashamed of yourselves.
Lemonade is illegal to sell in America. Stop using force against peaceful people. I spent 14 months in Baghdad, and I can't even...
Citizens in the Southern California town of Venice are outraged following a police raid on a raw food store. All over a few bottles of milk.
These foods that have now been made illegal, raw goat milk, raw cheese, raw anything. I mean, especially raw products. I mean, you can't go to the Whole Foods and the farmer's market anymore because they're controlled by the health department. And those places can't sell unpasteurized juices, unrefrigerated eggs. They can't sell the rough ceviche. They can't sell. I mean, the list is so ridiculous at this point.
And this is tyranny. Again, we're seeing a clampdown on really what should be some of the most wholesome behavior in America. That's classic America, lemonade stands and the rest of it. Then the coup de grace on top of it, you see them repeatedly pushing away the cameras. Don't even show what they're doing. Don't document it. No First Amendment, no right to consume your own foods. The Founding Fathers warned about this, and it's disgusting. Then you've seen the news where they're going to start doing TSA-style pat-downs at all the NFL stadiums, but one small step in the right direction, Lambeau Field, home of the Green Bay Packers, at least has decided for the time being to only use metal detectors rather than the full pat-downs and the touching of private parts. The National Football League is pushing for enhanced security, and starting with Sunday's game at Lambeau, all fans will be subjected to a handheld metal-detecting wand before being admitted. That's from the Green Bay Press-Gazette. Now, I think all this security is overdone, but at least they've said no for the time being to the full-on TSA-style deal. We know Homeland Security has been working with the NFL. They did the past Super Bowl that took place in Dallas, and I guarantee you they're behind this overall agenda. And we just need to say no. They're not going to stop the mobs who get drunk and celebrate after victories or losses alike and tear up public property. This is just about training the public, of course, as Alex always says, to be the slaves that society is becoming.